Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, depending on where you might be joining us from in the world today. My name is Meg Alexander. I'm part of Power to Fly's virtual hosting team. And as always, I could not be more honored to be hosting this exciting upcoming session. Now, before we dive in and introduce you to our speaker, I want to go over a couple quick housekeeping items, especially important if maybe this was this is your first event with Power to Fly. If that's the case, hi, welcome. We're so happy to meet you. Or maybe you just, you're a frequent flyer, but you haven't joined us for an event in a while. And if that's you, welcome back. We're so happy to see you again. Now, the biggest thing I want y'all to know about today's session is that y'all are encouraged to participate. You can do that in a couple different ways. One of the ways I recommend is turning on your camera to share your smiling, maskless faces with us safely. Now, there is no pressure here. If you don't feel comfortable, completely fine. You don't have to use video to join us. But truly, y'all, there is no need to be Instagram perfect. We do not care if you are joining us in a bathrobe or a ball gown. You could be sitting in a corner office or on your living room couch. We don't care. We just want to meet y'all where you are. Hi, Angelia. Thank you so much for joining. Please feel free, bring your 3-day, dry shampoo, messy buns, bring your furry coworkers. If you have a tiny human supervisor who is lording over you today, feel free to bring them as well. We can start learning at all ages, right? We just really want to meet you where you are. Now, to that end, you are also welcome to participate in the chat. I would love to see the chat pop in, ask questions there. You can add comments and let us know how you're feeling about what we're talking about today. I would love, love, love to see y'all in there. Now, if you want to open up the chat, let us know where you're joining us from today. I'm coming to you from Toledo, Ohio. This is land that belongs to the Fox, Kickapoo, and Potawatomi tribes in my area. So if you want to share where you're joining us from, I'm always eager to see how far our global audience spreads. But you are also more than encouraged to tell us whose land you're on, in case you know. Let's see, Grand Haven, Michigan. Ooh, not that far from me. Virginia, Texas. Oh, Nashville. Love it, y'all. Thank you so much for sharing. I absolutely love, love, love seeing the participation. Please feel free during this event, like I said, ask questions in the chat. You can comment on where, how you're feeling about how we're answering these, whatever you'd like to. Now, we are recording today's session. Now, what that means for you is you don't have to take notes. You get to sit back, relax, enjoy the conversation that Lorena and I are about to have, and not have to worry about missing that resource that someone mentioned. You can always go back and rewatch this recording. Now, everybody that registered, whether you join us for 5 minutes, the full 60, even if you just signed up and you don't make it today, and if that's you, hi from the past, you're watching this now. Thanks so much. If that is you, everybody is going to get an email from us. Everybody that registered in about 1 to 2 business days. So you'll probably get it next Monday. And it's going to contain a link to where you can rewatch this recording when it goes live on our website. Now, the website, honestly, for me, is the best value. You can search everything, the entire archive of Chat and Learns, everything that's happened since Lauren Haggerty, first started or hosted the first Lunch and Learn. It feels like eons ago. Everything through now is stored there. You can access all of our archives for free, and we would love to get those resources in the hands of as many people as possible. Now, if you cannot wait, let's say Lorena says something today that is just like mind-blowing, huge paradigm shift for you, and you cannot wait to share it with a friend or coworker or a relative, you don't have to wait 1 to 2 business days. You can always head over to our YouTube channel. I'll share links for all of this in the chat as we go. But you can always head over to our YouTube channel. We're live streaming there now, and the recording is usually posted within about 5 to 15 minutes at the end of the live stream. There is a huge section of our archives stored on that YouTube channel as well. But like I said, the mother load is on our website, and I'll share links again as we go. Now, like I said, please feel free to chime in the chat. We want to know if you have further questions. Are we addressing one of your questions and maybe we're just not getting, maybe we're not coming at it from the right angle. Maybe you have other details or context you think we should know. Please, please, please feel free to share that in the chat. If you asked a question upon registration or something's occurring to you, the best way to make sure that we are able to answer your question is to send it in. Ask early, ask often. I want to make sure that we give y'all the value that you came to get from today's event. Now, if you do have a question that you want to ask, but you want to stay anonymous, no worries. Instead of sharing it in the group chat, you're just going to pick my name, Meg Alexander, from that dropdown and DM me your question. I'll raise it and keep you anonymous. Now, last but not least, before we dive in and introduce you to our speaker, Lorena is here today on behalf of UKG. Now, I'm going to share links for all of this again in the chat as we go. But what you're looking at right here is UKG's company page on powertofly.com. Now, once you're there, you can learn more about UKG as an org. You can get information on their benefits. You can take a look at events. So past events that they've partnered on with us, or events that they are scheduled to do with us in the future. That is a gold mine if you are looking for talking points in case of an interview. So I definitely recommend you check that out, as well as obviously the big value that everybody comes to Power to Fly for is the job pages. So you can also search all of their open roles on the website as well. Now, if you are interested in UKG, if you are actively job seeking, especially if you are active and you don't necessarily see a job there that fits you, at the top right-hand corner of this page, once you log in, there'll be a big pink button that says follow. Clicking that does some really great things for you, but effectively what it does is it works like your friend who works at UKG. It's going to allow Power to Fly to keep you posted when UKG announces new roles. So that way you can we take some of the job search lift off of you. You don't have to keep coming back and trying to check and recheck job boards that they seemingly never change until you miss a day and all of a sudden there's 40 new jobs posted. So that kind of allows Power to Fly to take that weight off of you. But also it's going to let UKG know that you are interested in working with them even before you fill out an application. So this is also a great option if, maybe you're not actively seeking, maybe you're just kind of looking around to see what's out there. Hitting that follow button basically gives you a short list of companies that you are already interested in. So it makes your job search later on that much easier. So I definitely recommend you take advantage of that. It's free. Follow and unfollow as many times as you like, as many companies as you like. But obviously, I recommend that you check out UKG. Now, really excited to introduce you to today's speaker. So Lorena Quinones-Torres is a manager of software engineering at UKG with over 6 years of human capital management software experience. Now, she started her journey at UKG in the payroll support center and worked her way to product management as well as engineering leadership. Now, Lorena's experience working directly with UKG's customers drives how she approaches the relationships between the teams that she leads and her product and business counterparts to create a team that truly focuses on the customer experience. Lorena, I am very excited to get to interview you today. Is there anything else you'd like our audience to know about you before we dive into questions?
I think I can probably dive a little bit deeper into some of my background probably when I started here,
please.
Because I think if I had looked at how I started here, I don't know that I would have ever imagined that I would end up where I am today. So when I first started at UKG, when the first opportunity ever came up, it was actually a friend of mine that was already working here. And he's like, hey, my team's hiring. Would you like to work here? And at the time I was working marketing at a hospital, which very unrelated to anything I'm doing right now. But at the time I was looking for more of a challenge in my life. And I said, yeah, sure. Why not? Sounds like a fun idea, a fun plan. And when I interviewed, I didn't have much context about HR payroll software past a little bit that I had scratched the surface on in school. And it was a job at our frontline support center / call center for UKG's core payroll product at the time. I think it's called UKG Pro. So that's our payroll software. Sorry, we've merged. So the name has changed a little bit. But I don't know that I ever would have seen myself or assumed I'm going to be working frontline technical support for payroll critical questions. It was not something I had any knowledge of. Nor did I ever imagine I would work for a software company, but that was how I started my path in here. So I always really like to highlight that because I think sometimes you have this skewed view of being a support person or support representative, or even starting out at a pseudo call center. And it can actually open a lot of doors for you, teach you a lot, and lead you to a lot of places.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. We love hearing that. Okay. All right, so let's dive into questions. Obviously, with the subject of today's chat being making that career move, how can we determine if a career in tech was right for us? How did you decide that you wanted to move into the tech space?
This is probably a pretty roundabout answer. I had no idea that this is where I would land. I had no idea that I would even be a good fit here. I always assumed in my head, so for someone to work in tech, like they must know all the computer science, they must know how to code everything. And I knew slash now I know more, obviously. I can't say I know how to write code, but I can definitely read and follow things along. But to find out that that wasn't necessarily the case is interesting. But I just didn't think this would ever be where I would end up. I probably would have thought, hey, I'll study computer science instead of what I did study. So for me, really, it was curiosity that led me here, is the best way I can describe it. When I started in the support center, I constantly wanted to learn different things about our product. I wanted to learn more about payroll, and eventually I wanted to learn more about benefits. And as I started getting better with the technical support aspect of it, I just kind of kept growing and seeking opportunities that would challenge me a little bit more and a little bit more, given it was rough at times. Because when you are learning something new, whether that be a new product, a new experience, like it's very difficult. And the best way to learn is often the most painful sometimes. But through that, I just kept feeding my curiosity, and eventually I landed over in the product side of our software product after having worked through a brand new product launch that UKG did. And once I was in the product side, I was working very closely with a development team. So I was a business analyst for the current team actually that I'm leading. And after working so closely with them, also I had never even imagined leadership in my career path. And after working so closely with this team, I found that I wanted the opportunity to make a bigger difference for my team, for what we worked on, for the strategy and everything like that. And that's kind of how I found it. I'm sure there's a million different paths for someone figuring out that tech is for them. But if I were to look back into my history, it would just be curiosity and like problem solving. That's honestly what's driven me a lot.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Being able to kind of follow, follow your, not necessarily your passions, but your interests is absolutely huge, and really does, kind of lead you in paths that you might never have chosen before. So I think that that's a really good way to look at it. All right, now let's talk about some of the challenges that people face. What were some of the main barriers or main hurdles that you were looking at as you began your transition, and how did you handle those?
Honestly, there's a ton. Many of them were self-inflicted, right? So, and I think that this is true actually for any career path, even like when you're looking at job applications, thinking to apply, like doubting yourself more than you should. There were a lot of times that I was like, oh, that I'm probably not good enough for that, or I could be better. I don't fit that role 100%. So I shouldn't even move forward in that direction. So that was really hard for me, that not believing in myself probably as much as I could. Part of the ways that I overcame that was actually networking. So the benefit of being in such a large company was the ability that I've met so many people from so many different paths and departments that gave me the ability to interact with all sorts of different job titles, things that I never even knew existed, right? So project managers, product managers, program managers, engineering managers. I have interacted with so many different people in different roles, and it gave me the ability to figure out, oh, does this seem like something that I might be interested in? And if it did, whether or not I felt like it fit what I already knew, it gave me the opportunity to ask questions and get a better and deeper understanding. So I would say more than anything, to overcome these things is trying to find people who are in these roles or can help guide you to find someone who's already in a role that maybe you're interested in or have absolutely no idea what it might be about, and get a little bit better understanding. Because I can tell you, when I started here 6.5 years ago, I had no idea what a business analyst was. I had no idea that that was even a career path, an existing thing.
We did get a question in the chat. When you say business analyst, what is involved in that? Obviously, job titles might fluctuate from company to company, or especially industry to industry. But in your case, what does that mean? What do you do as a business analyst?
Yeah. So it's funny because I have actually seen the title business analyst used a little differently in our company at UKG. I think the official title is product management business analyst. And what that means is that I call it kind of the interpreter or the translator between our customer or our business needs and our developers. So part of what you do there is you literally work with your business stakeholders as well as with the development team, and you figure out what the problem is, right? So the business has some kind of problem that they're struggling with your software or something like that. And you come up with what are called user stories. So usually you have a feature or something like that, and you write down, okay, I expect that if I click this button, I should be able to get this result. That's like the most basic way I can phrase it. By the way, it can obviously have a lot more involvement, but basically that you are literally writing what the requirements are for new features, for existing things that you want to update and enhance. You are the person that is writing how things are going to shape eventually, actually.
I love that. And it sounds like, both a position of great influence, but also like great responsibility if you are, taking ownership for that relationship there. That sounds really cool. I like that.
Yeah, honestly, that position was probably one of the ones where I felt like I have two roles within UKG that I personally felt helped me grow a lot. Business analyst was one of them. Professionally, I was not always the most confident and comfortable doing presentations, but I think that's like the top fear that ever existed. Maybe after heights, but I still think it's probably public speaking. And part of being a business analyst, when you're coming up with solutions to the problem, is essentially getting buy-in from your business holders, from your stakeholders on, hey, this is the solution to the problem that we think is going to benefit you the best. And you kind of have to sell it. You have to make sure that there is agreement on, yeah, this is our path forward and it's going to bring you the best value possible. And so being comfortable with having those kinds of conversations where you're influencing the way that someone is going to take something was very new to me. I don't know that I felt super comfortable with it, but it definitely helped me a lot with my presentation skills, which definitely could have used some, polishing.
All right. Okay. I like this. Keep those questions coming, y'all. If you've got questions, please feel free to throw them in here. If you want us to dive in deeper on a topic or a term that we're using, please feel free. This is your time to get your questions answered. All right, so let's talk about the interview process. A lot of people are unsure how to approach interviews, especially if they are trying to pivot into a new career field. What were some of the ways that you were able to connect your previous experience within education to your goals of working in the tech industry?
So I think education initially helped me a lot when it came to discussing my communication style and how I am able essentially to get a point across or be able to teach someone something new. Part of my first role here did involve our customers submitting, all sorts of different tickets for help with how to work our software. And sometimes it wasn't anything wrong. It was honestly a knowledge gap on how our software works. As you can imagine, software sometimes can get pretty complicated. And so part of my role was literally to get on calls with our customers and look at the product and walk them through how to solve one of their problems, whether how to run payroll for the first time, if it was their first time running it and stuff like that. And the ability to use kind of my education background to first lay out, hey, so these are the steps we're going to take. Let's do them together. Can you repeat it? So some of the ways but it's true, that is like the best way to learn. You start with the example, you do it together, and then the person does it on their own. So I think my background in education definitely helps me with regards on how I'm teaching someone something new with our product. It even helped me in my business analyst role as well, because you're delivering new enhancements, new functionality, new things to the software. And you typically end up writing some documentation, typically with some help also, but writing documentation and walking users through what this new feature is going to be. And sometimes you do that with your dev team in partnership. So they might be in a call with you doing that, but sometimes you can do it yourself. And for me, the education background has been really beneficial with those kinds of scenarios.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. That was one of the questions that we get really frequently, right? Is I have a background in X, how do I translate that to tech? Obviously we can't go down the list of what everybody's backgrounds are. But have you seen other people from similarly, like seemingly unrelated backgrounds, make that transition or make a good case for why this is a transferable skill?
I have seen people from all sorts of different backgrounds. One of our business analysts that works closely with my dev team currently, he was a vet, and then while he was in school, he worked as a temp in helping one of our special projects for our software, and he ended up getting a full-time position. And then from there, he made his way over to product. Typically, what I will say is, without the like computer science degree or something like that, if you really want to go straight into development or something like that, you probably take different paths. No path is a straight line. Everyone can kind of find their own way. And sometimes it's not super clear when you start either. It's just a matter of asking questions and exposing yourself to the resources that you have around and the people that you have around.
Yeah, I very much appreciate that. I think that's great. I think the other thing to keep in mind, y'all, is that like seemingly unrelated skills or unrelated, abilities or experiences that you've had can very easily be translated to different situations and scenarios, right? One of the ways that I have heard, because I sit on a lot of these chats, one of the ways that I've heard is to try and distill your resume, like take what your existing resume looks like for whatever field you're in, distill it down as simple as possible. Like try and think like a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old is going to read this. If you can distill it down to like really, really base concepts, it's a lot easier to see where this would also fit in that, because you're really reducing it to the nuts and bolts, the like no details, you're stripping it back. And it becomes a lot easier to say like, oh no, I've never led, a cohort of 30 employees, but I did wrangle drunk cats while teaching kindergarten for 5 years. You know what I mean? Like, so these are, don't you laugh at me, Angelia, this is true. Like, this is seriously like, you can find like, common ground within these things, Angelia is a preschool teacher too. This is fabulous. Thank you so much. This is why you need to participate, y'all. It makes these events so much more fun. Okay. But seriously, like there are ways to transition these things. And we talk about it in terms of like seemingly unrelated fields, but this is also true for people who are, considering a pivot after a career break. If you are looking to return into the workforce, by living as a person on the planet, you have developed skills, you have developed communication skills, you have developed interpersonal skills and how to kind of like Lorena said, be the translator kind of between these two groups. These are really, you guys are killing me in the chat right now. Thank you for this. These are really, really, really great ways to show that, no, I haven't done that exact thing, but I've done this, and that is all of the, the basics that you need to be able to learn how to do such and such. So I think that is absolutely really great advice. Thank you, Lorena. Okay. What should people know about the tech industry before they set their sights on it? Is there anything that people should know about it that maybe wouldn't be apparent to somebody who's completely outside of the industry as, kind of looking in?
I think I kind of touched on this before, but I would say that tech does not just only mean you are a software developer writing code. There is so much more within tech than just that is adjacent to it. And honestly, just as important, right? So I think don't just assume that you need to learn how to code and the only way to work in tech is to be a developer and that is end all be all. No, definitely not. So again, like I said, there were tons of roles that I had no idea even existed. And I think some of them, like you've maybe heard, right? Like project managers. We use project managers. That might not necessarily be their title, but that's part of the work that they do. They make sure that when we're working on features or new things that we're going to bring into our product, that all that work is hitting the timelines that are expected and that we are going to be able to deliver it to our business partners on time. That is a very transferable skill. Project managing exists in a lot of different industries. It is not just unique to us, but it just might not have necessarily the same title. And even across companies, it might not have the same title.
I like that highlight that, tech does not just mean the one thing. There are absolutely, pivoting into tech as an industry. Tech exists at so many different companies, right? Everybody needs a tech team at this point. We are past, unless you're running like a mom and pop, like lemonade stand on the corner, generally speaking, you're going to need to have a web presence or you're going to need to have an ordering system or whatever. So I think that's really important to remember, is like pivoting into tech does not necessarily mean leaving behind any industry other than tech.
Yeah. And it can come from all sorts of backgrounds. I can also give you an example. I have a sister who, when we were younger and in college, she studied English literature. She swore she was going to be like a book editor in New York. That was her end all be all dream. Fast forward to now. She actually works as a user experience strategist for Vanguard. Exactly. You think like, how does that jump exist? But it does in different ways. And again, incremental changes. So everyone has a different path and it can get you here. And user experience strategist, that's understanding people. Psychology can go really deeply into this actually, and research into human behaviors. That is also a really good way to pivot into it. User experience, user strategy, user research, if you're more into the data of it. Those are roles that exist across many companies, also tech and non-tech that use tech. So just, it's not all the Amazons, the Googles, those aren't necessarily all the companies in the world that just have all these roles within them.
Yeah. I think that is a very, very good thing to flag. Thank you. Y'all are coming in hot with the questions, so I'm grabbing all of them. We will be going through these because we will have time for them. So thank you so much for sending these in. These are really, really good. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about getting into tech without a technical degree. I think a lot, we are hearing more and more and more from people who are not only just like talking about their pivot into tech, but also people who are like, yeah, I wanted to work in tech. I don't have a 4-year degree. Instead, I went to a boot camp, blah, blah, blah. So let's kind of break that down to start with. Is it possible to get into tech without a technical degree?
I mean, the simple answer is yes. It is possible to get into tech with anything, right? But I will say, which I think is true, when you don't have the traditional path of, oh, I went and I got this degree and I did an internship related to my degree, and then I ended up in a job like that. You end up having to do a little bit more legwork than someone who had gone a traditional path. Nothing wrong with that. I can tell you personally that not having done the traditional path did lead to me feeling like one of my biggest strengths is actually because I didn't go the traditional path, because I don't have the same mindset that everyone else on my team did. I know that that's one of my strengths. And I know that my senior leadership here in this company, that's part of what they appreciate that I bring to the table. But yes, I mean, absolutely you can, but you do have to put in more work, right? I would say you'd probably have to have like if you did a boot camp, a portfolio, a repo and GitHub. You might have to do a little or a lot more networking, but all those opportunities exist and they're out there. It's just a matter of putting in the time and the effort for them. It's not going to be easy. Nothing worth having is necessarily easy.
Yeah. Generally
Except
speaking,
cake.
very true. Except what?
Cake.
You know
Cake
what?
is simple.
That is so true. And now I'm having cake for lunch. It's your fault.
Sorry.
I'm good with this. Sorry, not sorry. Okay, so let's talk about some of the skills. We did have a couple of people asking questions in the chat about like learning platforms you recommend. Let's start with, from your opinion and from your viewpoint, what are some of the key technical skills people should focus on developing?
I can tell you that basically almost any any tech company, software company, whether you are on the product side, whether you're on the development side, what that might look like, it's good to familiarize yourself with some of the things that are buzzwords, I would say, for tech companies. Like for most, if not all, development, software development teams, they work on agile development, which might mean nothing to someone who doesn't have that context, but I'm sure you've seen it thrown around. Scrum, there's Scrum Alliance. They actually have certifications and trainings. So familiarizing, if you read a job description and some things like, oh, familiar with this, look it up, research it. A lot of times there's different certifications, different programs, but when it comes to learning things also, I mean, it's horrible to say, you can Google a ton of information. I personally, for my current team, our agile development process was a little different than what we're turning into. And part of what I did essentially to prep my team for this change in process that we're about to go through was I went on Reddit and I found the agile subreddit and I immersed myself in there. And I read everything there was to read about the topic that I needed to make sure my team was going to be encountering. And I wanted to make sure I could provide as much guidance and help as possible. But yeah,
Yes.
Reddit is a wealth of information. I mean,
Oh yeah. I mean, it's something I consistently hear on chats like this is, don't throw good money after bad. See what you can get for free first. See what you can learn, what you can immerse yourself in. Because like, especially if you are pivoting in from completely non-tech, you have no idea what's going to interest you. So, the idea of like, well, if you're going to start doing, this, you have to start on this floor. You might not know what that is. And I cannot second like heavily enough your recommendation of Google. Everybody does their job with Google, y'all. Literally all of us. And anybody who tells you otherwise is lying to you to look cool. Like Google everything and anything, because if nothing else, information available at your fingertips should be used. And I don't care if that's information about who has the best tacos in the county, or whether it's, what is the latest version of SQL, which I called SQL for an embarrassingly long time. So,
same.
yes, exactly. Like I didn't know what these things were. Like I'd read the word, I'd never heard it said. So, makes sense. We are getting questions from people about stuff like ageism. Some of these things we're not going to be able to touch on just because, I'm not going to be able to give you good insights out of experience. Same with Lorena, but I am going to throw some links up in here to where you can check out past chats that we've done. We have an entire series on ageism in the workplace and in the job search and all kinds of stuff. So sit tight. I'm going to be trying to thread in links to stuff where y'all can look to get more resources from Powerfly or past chats that we've done with UKG. So give me some time here. I'll be filtering those in as we go. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the internship area. Have you seen candidates with non-traditional experience land internships? Let's start there. Have you seen that happen?
I'm trying to think through it. Usually the internships, at least if you look at like the dev side, the internships are typically fed through like technical programs. Now, if you don't look at, again, software development specifically, business analyst, product manager, yeah, you probably could get an internship through that. Internships are always interesting at best because I'm trying to describe how I think about them. Sorry. Okay. Internships are a great learning experience, but sometimes because they cater a lot to people who are recent grads or new grads, I do find that sometimes it's a little harder to get in there.
Okay. All right. Now, what about volunteer work? Do you think hiring managers would see volunteer tech work as experience? This is something that gets recommended, obviously, on multiple chats that I've sat in on. Have you seen this work in practice?
I've not seen it work in practice. I can tell you from my perspective, right? Whenever I'm hiring someone new, if someone has like a really strong volunteer development experience, right? They have a portfolio they can show and they can speak to the technical questions that they might be asked or anything like that, I would have absolutely no problem hiring them. For me, that's not a question. If you can do the job that you are applying for and are being hired to do, there's no problem there. I think a lot of times with that, if someone has like really strong volunteer work, what I would even suggest with that is leverage the people you've probably met through that volunteer work to be,
pardon me, sorry, y'all.
To be like a resource, right? That can help you, maybe refer you to a job or to a friend's job or to someone like that.
No, I think that's a really good call out. I don't know how this question was intended when it was asked, but I will say a lot of the stuff that I've heard is obviously to whatever extent you are able. Not all of us have the luxury of the time or the dedication or whatever to volunteer your time once you start learning how to do these things. If you do have that, if you are resourced enough or privileged enough to be able to do that, I have heard from multiple people that this is a good way, if not to gain experience, then more even to like deepen your knowledge and like become more comfortable with the things that you are learning to do, either in independent study or part of a boot camp or whatever. I think the guy I talked to yesterday said, you'd be surprised at how much stuff you'll learn when you think that you're just digging around. Truly. Like none of us knew how to use Instagram, and there was not a tutorial that they sent out when Instagram became a thing. But within however many months or weeks or whatever, everybody was taking terrible pictures of their dinner. Everybody was. So like, I love this idea that, you know, volunteering can be excellent and it can be a great way to, you know, build a portfolio, show off your skills, whatever. It's also a really good idea to just get yourself more comfortable with it. You know, building some stupid app for your friends because you don't want to have to decide who's going to pick what's like what you're getting for dinner that night or something. You know, these are all ways that you can be like, have more fun with what you're learning. And it truly it sticks so much better. Knowledge, I mean, Angelia, all of our educators are going to tell you the same thing. If you are having fun and enjoying the process, that is going to stick better than like fear-based, you know, cramming. Oh my gosh, I have to know all these things. So loving this here. Okay. Let's see, get back to my questions list. All right. What do you think, in your opinion, is the most significant transferable skill that is useful in a tech sphere?
Teamwork and communication. I'm sorry, I'm going to list both of them because both are actually just really important. Every single day, everything you do in any company will involve teamwork and appropriate communication. That doesn't mean like take the fun out of everything you're doing, right? I communicate very, very authentically to me, which includes a lot of humor. I try not to take everything or anything really too seriously at the end of the day, but like I can communicate across different levels. And it's not just about communicating with a peer. It's knowing the difference between communicating with peers that are in your same group that probably are exposed to the same things you are, but also communicating with people who have absolutely no idea what you're encountering every day, as well as communicating up. There's different conversations that you have with your peers than what you should give and communicate with people who are higher up and have a 10-foot view, right? So if you are trying in the middle of resolving a problem or doing something, you're going to give a lot more information to your peers who are in it with you versus someone asks you, hey, can you give me a quick update on this? It's not the same. It's not the same delivery. As well as same with customers, right? So this is kind of like the whole customer service aspect of it. You do not communicate the same way with your peers or even with your higher ups as you would with your business stakeholders, with the people that are essentially using your product or working with you, but from like a receiving end. You definitely change your communication style. So being able to know when to communicate, how much to communicate with whom is super important. And I feel like sometimes that's lost and it takes a long time, honestly, to get good at it. There have been times where I've said way too much, learned probably walk it back next time. Don't say too much in explaining something. Like I've gotten into a technical explanation about something when I really didn't need to. Honestly, just saying it didn't work for 5 seconds, but it'll work now. Like, obviously that's a very simple example, but something like that. You don't need to go in deep on some stuff. And then teamwork. Right now, my software development team is a team. We have developers, we have testers, we have a business analyst, we have a product manager. And we all work very closely together. That's just our core team. We also work very closely together with other development teams within our organization because our work impacts them and their work impacts us. So if we don't work as a good team under communicating what we're working on and what we're doing, something that my team does could literally break something in our software for another team. So communication is key, but also being mindful enough to know that at the end of the day, like you have your small teams, but you're also part of bigger teams as it goes through. And you have to figure out like when you have to work with others.
I'm loving the example that you gave about communicating to different levels. As many of these as I sit on, I have never heard that called out before. So I think that is wonderful. And you're right. It really does speak to the idea that like communication is key, but knowing what to tell who and when is massive. And this is something, we all struggle with. I don't think there's a single person that's like, no, I always know exactly what I should tell to who. But yeah, I think that's a really good way to kind of assess your communication skills. Are you good in one area but not in another? Are you good at explaining, like maybe you're good at translating from tech into person but not person into tech? What is there that you could kind of work on, or what areas might be more useful when it comes to whatever position you are aiming for? Okay, so let's talk about, let's see. What other questions did we get? We had one about learning platforms. I know you had mentioned Reddit. Are there any other platforms or like free sites that you recommend people kind of hit first to dip their toes in and get as a feel of what they might be learning?
I often suggest Reddit because Reddit will typically give you answers to a lot of other free ones. I think there's one that I've seen mentioned a few times. I think it's called, and this is specifically if you want coding, right? Like there's all sorts of different things, but if what you want ultimately at the end of the day is to be a software developer, right? I think there's one called Free Code Camp. Within that, I think but I think this might cost money. Like there's LinkedIn Learning, and there is Udemy. I can also tell you that within, and I know this is terrible to go back to it, but I swear to you, I use Reddit a lot. I'm in the subreddit called Girls Gone Wired. There's a ton of information there. Yes, exactly. It's about women in tech. And women post all sorts of things. And there's also people who career change who post there. And you can literally look through their entire sub. And there's a ton of links and information. Same CS career questions, women in tech, learn programming. There are actual subreddits for each different programming language. There's one for agile, right? So agile development, being a scrum master, that is, it sounds weird to even say that that is a role in a company that is an actual job that you get paid to do, because without understanding the concept of scrum, it's like, what does that mean? But it basically helps software development teams move through their work and their process and be reliable and delivering. That's probably a terrible explanation, and I hope the agile gods don't spite me for it, but that's just the easiest way I can explain it for someone who's just very unaware about it. But all these things exist and they're out there. It's just a matter of looking for them.
Okay. All right. I'm sharing some more links in the chat here, y'all. I got the link for Free Code Camp. I'm also grabbing some more links for searches of our archives, stuff on ageism, stuff on returnships, transitioning and pivoting into a new career. So I'm going to share all of those to where you can find them on our website. There's also that also leads you to where you can change your search and kind of dial in a little bit more there as well. Okay, so let's go to our next question. Where did it go? Okay, this person had said, one of the challenges of transitioning is not knowing how a new sector's lingo translates to roles in other fields. Could you give us, just off the top of your head, some tech titles that might be synonymous for different titles in other areas? For existent, like a product owner versus a product manager versus a product designer. Is there any of these that you can list off for us that are like, yeah, these are some of the more common ones that you would see?
Yeah, I can tell you that I will do my best, but also they can vary by company. So just as a call out, that ultimately reading the description is probably your best bet to understanding fully what it is. I can tell you typically, for example, product designer is more focused on UX look and feel. So that's probably a little more different than a product manager or a product owner or a business analyst. Product manager and product owner are similar, still not entirely the same, but very, very close. So those are ones that you could probably see interchangeably. And business analyst can sometimes also be somewhat related to product owner. They're all within a similar area of working with the product, essentially, of like taking the need of where the product direction is going to go. It's just kind of different levels. Basically, a product owner owns a certain product line. A product manager probably looks at competing industries, competing companies, and seeing where should our product grow into, and comes up with like long-term strategy and vision for this product line. Business analyst is more in the details, right? So they're all related, just kind of different levels, and different companies have different needs for them.
Okay, all right. Then the other thing people had been asking about, like, how does this translate? Is that something that would be like appropriate to like email a recruiter or something like, hey, I'm looking at these jobs. Is this the same title as such and such?
I don't think it hurts. I will say this. Cold emailing a recruiter and asking a question about a job opening that they have is probably something that makes them very happy, because it means you read, it means you're interested, and it means you're being proactive. I don't ever think there's anything wrong if you have a question about asking a recruiter for more information on a posting they have.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea here. Okay. Do you have any recommendations for learning coding? Like, is it better to start with the front end or the back end? Did you have a preference when you were starting?
So this is kind of funny. I actually don't know how to code. I can get by of looking at things, but I cannot write code. I always joke with my team of developers. I'm like, if you want me to code this, I will, but it's going to be like a cat typing on the keyboard. It means nothing, because I don't know. What I do know, and this is kind of where I think my history and my transition through really is different than the rest of my peers, is just that I know our product very well functionally. I understand our product, some of the business rules, the nuances of it, and how it behaves, and that helps me. I don't know the code at all, but I can tell you the behavior of it very well. So I don't really know that I can tell you like, oh, this is what's easiest, this is what's best. I can tell you our company, we hire a lot of full stack developers, so it's both sides, right? And there's many resources that you can find online probably where you can search how to like learn how to be a full stack developer, and it'll honestly probably tell you start learning with Java and start with like the older languages and slowly build your way up. There's tons of paths. I know because I've looked at them, because I have contemplated maybe I do want to learn how to do software development, and ultimately I probably will, honestly. I haven't done it. I haven't done it yet. It's definitely something that I personally probably want to do more for me. I'm never going to be better than my team at it. I do know that, and I place a ton of trust on my team because of that. Because ultimately they know the code better than I ever will.
Yep, that's a good point. I've got some questions in the chat here about recordings and stuff. The chat itself will not be shared with the email that goes out to remind y'all of the recording availability. So if you want to save the chat, you can go into your, let's see, should be able to save it, but I'm going to try and grab all the links as well before we drop to see if we can maybe throw those in with the rewatch recording. The other thing, y'all, I generally try not to push other people's chats or like past chats, when we're doing one like UKG for sponsorship. But because there's so many questions on coding, I did throw one link in the chat to a past event. It was yesterday. I just hosted it, which is why it's fresh in my mind. That chat was along the same lines, but with someone who is in coding. So if coding specifically is what interests you, go back and check out that chat. It was really, I mean, I very much enjoyed it. It was a really good session, and we got a lot of really like candid feedback from the speaker. So hopefully that is helpful for y'all. Okay, let's talk about, okay, this person wanted to know if you are unsure, if you're trying to figure out where your interest lies within tech, how should we go about like that initial, like kind of getting to understand where we might fit? Is this something where like a boot camp could be helpful to kind of like get you like a smattering of skills? Or is this another, like, let's go back to Reddit? And don't feel bad because I go to Reddit.
No.
Oh my God, so much.
So this is a bit interesting. So if we're not talking specific about coding, so you're trying to figure out like where within software, like, or tech you might fit in, right? Is it the product side? Is it the project management side? Is it the development side? Is it just actually on the customer side, but more on the strategy base, right? So like a higher level thinker than just like direct frontline customer help. I would say that more than that, that's networking more than anything. Actually, I wouldn't suggest Reddit for that necessarily. I would find there, I mean, every city has like major networking events, and it's kind of where to find them. I think South Florida has like a South Florida tech meetup that happens every so often and stuff like that. Sorry, I say South Florida because that's where I'm located, but I'm sure a lot of different places have it. And if not, right, like there are definitely online communities that can be found. But for that, I would definitely suggest networking. Because speaking with people with a job title that you think maybe you might be interested in, you don't know, you found a job listing with this that has, let's say, a product manager title, and you look at this company and you can look at the people that work there and you find a product manager, message them. I can tell you in my current role and even in my previous role, when I started in support, it definitely felt like there was no way out of support. So the fact that me and a few people did make it out of support led to others who were still in support reaching out and asking us how we did it, and how we liked our job and what we did. So reaching out, I'm always happy to have a conversation with anyone that messages me on Teams, on Slack in my company, or even just reaches out to me via LinkedIn asking me like, hey, can I get more specific experience on like how you did what you did? What was your thought process and stuff like that? I'm always happy to share it. So I don't know. I mean, someone can obviously opt to say like, I'm going to ignore that message. I'm not interested, but send the message. send a message to a product manager, be like, hey, can you tell me a little bit more about your day-to-day role? What do you do? What made you sure that you were interested in that?
Okay. All right. All right. Let's move forward in the in the process here. When people are looking at the onboarding process, do you have any tips that would help someone to thrive within a technical role as they're, kind of going on? People are especially interested in ways to establish like strategic connections inside the company. So let's talk about onboarding. When you were going into your first tech role, what is like, is there anything that you kind of wish you had known or wish somebody had told you before that process started?
That it's okay to not know everything and to be very patient with yourself. We're a full HR software company. So we have different products that we support. So there's payroll, there's benefits, there's payment services, there's hiring. All these different things are actually different product lines and are all very different in their business logic behind it. I have worked for 3 products now. Every time I've moved into a new product, I am not not very patient with myself, and I should be, right? And so I actually give that advice to every new hire that I have come into my team. The current product I work on right now is very accounting heavy. Accounting is not the easiest thing to learn. So I always tell everyone, be patient with yourself. Be patient with yourself. Be patient with yourself. And then past that, don't be afraid to ask questions, ultimately. And also, there is a lot to be said for the ability to search properly. An example is in our company, we use Slack. Slack is great in the sense that it has a ton of history tied to it. So I've had instances where I'm newish to the team and I had a question. The first thing I'll do is I'll search for it. A lot of companies also, especially I assume most tech companies have like internal knowledge bases. When I first started out, that was one of the first things that was taught to us was like, if you have a question, if you come across something you don't know, search for it in our knowledge base. You might find an answer for what you're looking for. And so learning how to search before asking the question is great. But then also then feeling comfortable to reach out. I don't know that I've ever come across someone, at least I can speak for UKG, right, in this company, that when I've reached out to them and asked them a question, they've completely blown me off. I have met so many people this way as well.
I like that. I think that's very, very decent advice. Okay, so we had a lot of questions from people regarding the like kind of customer centric approach. How can people foster that, and how do you make sure that you proceed with a customer focus in your day-to-day activities?
I think part of that is just being understanding and empathetic that what we are, when you're in the development or product side of a business line, typically you're not the first person that a customer reaches out to. You are a few layers behind. You don't know what it's like to be the person that has to answer that first phone call when someone's upset, when something's gone wrong. So that for me is something that I've experienced. I remember New Year's Eve, my first year, taking payroll critical calls, and a customer had an issue with his payroll, and it was, I want to say it was close towards the end of the day. And it took me an hour to resolve it. And that customer was not happy. It was New Year's. We were all trying to get out of here, right? And party. But so having those experiences, I think for me, really helped me to maintain that no matter what I do, whenever my team is looking at solutions or looking at something, I always make sure that they think about, okay, but how does this impact our business teams? Like, how does this impact them? So if we're working on something and it's like, oh, it's easy, they can just do this by doing this, this, and this. Okay, well, you're telling them to do 3 different clicks on 3 different pages when we could do it in one foul swoop. Yeah, it might take us maybe an hour to gather all the information, but you're asking them to do the same thing 3 different times. So always taking into account how much effort something is for our business partners. It's really easy to be just like, yeah, it's 3 buttons. 3 buttons for how many things? How long does it take it? Is it in different pages? But more than anything, that comes down to like being empathetic and then also encouraging the teams to, it's almost doing like shadow sessions basically to understand what our business partners go through. Because ultimately, we are here for them. We are here for our customers and for our business partners to make sure that their lives can be easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a very good thing to call out. Okay, we've only got about 6 minutes left. I want to try and get to one more question here. A lot of people wrote in asking about imposter syndrome. Now, I am of the belief that imposter syndrome is not only something that a lot more people live with than I think would admit to it, but also one of those things where it's not necessarily a bad thing. I have had to internalize this because in a lot of ways I'm never going to get rid of my imposter syndrome. But just because I have somehow hornswoggled everyone into thinking that I know what to do in my daily life, I consider that an accomplishment, especially since I apparently didn't realize that what I was doing was faking the funk until I got there. Now for you, how do you approach this? Like, what have you, do you suffer imposter syndrome? How do you shake that off, especially when you are new to a field and it's going to feel like, I don't know why I'm here.
Yeah, no, I definitely suffer from imposter syndrome. Sometimes it's worse than others, right? I can tell you with my current role, initially, my imposter syndrome really had to do with the fact that I do not know how to code. That for me was something that terrified me. I have to remind myself often that no, I was hired with them. I went through the interview process with them knowing that I did not have this skill set, that it was not something I ever even committed to learning, right? And that because of that, I do bring a different viewpoint to the table, which is just as important. So I think it's just kind of reminding yourself that you are there for a reason. Everyone who put you here, who helped you get here, who interviewed you, if you're in a role already, like it is for a reason. So yeah, that's like the best way I can say it. Basically, just believe in yourself and do the best you can, and know that you bring strengths to the table, right? I know that my customer service experience has helped me tremendously in the way that I partner with my business stakeholders as well as my product counterparts, and it makes the collaboration really easy because genuinely, I know what it's like to be on their end. I also try to think about the fact that because I know the business side of things, I bring the perspective of what it's like, again, to be that frontline person that a lot of the software developers have never experienced. Even some of our business analysts have never experienced it. They don't know what it's like to be on those calls.
That's a very good point. That is a very, very good point there. It is really important to remember that just because you've been marinating in something and it's like, oh, it's only 3 clicks, it's not a big deal, like does not mean it's going to be as easy for everyone else. And that is a really good point to make. True. Like the people that you are working with may not, and likely probably don't have the same path as you did, especially if you're coming from a non-traditional background, and especially since non-traditional does not mean the same thing to literally anyone. So, it is really important to remember that perspective can be very helpful because, if nothing else, you can be the person that's like, okay, but why do we do it this way? Can you not in a why do we do it this way, justify it over changing it, but in a no, what got us here? Why do we do it that way? Is it for something that's still going on and is still the case or not? That fresh perspective can be helpful both to shake things up as well as reestablish things that are working or need to continue working. So yeah, really, really good. Okay, we only have 3 minutes left. I'm so sorry, all this time always goes so quickly. But I did want to make sure we kept a little bit of time back here to talk again about UKG. These are some questions that we had asked of Lorena before today's event started. Obviously, there's some really great ones in here, but the one I want to touch on is your top tips for someone who's interviewing. Are these UKG specific or are these just general top tips that you recommend?
I would say that it's general. Knowing how to leverage your experience will work for anything, right? Kind of how I spoke about the education piece of it, right? Using your education past, your ability to come up with a plan that's being followed a year ahead of time, right? Like using all these things to describe how you can actually work on a project and lead it through completion. Being able to use your words and how to phrase it in your resume, for example, or even in an interview experience on moving it forward. I think education, right, because we were there, is a good example, right? You may not have had experience dealing with a tough customer. You may not have experience dealing with conflict within a team, but maybe you have had experience dealing with a difficult parent. How did you handle that? You have to be professional, right? You can't just say, forget this and just leave and walk out. So knowing how to take those experiences and flip them into more of a business setting.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. All right. What is your favorite part about working at UKG?
I would say the fact that I've had the opportunities that I have had to grow and just to honestly, like I said, I'm a really curious person. Part of the reason, the second department I worked in UKG, part of the reason I went there was because it was a brand new product that no one had any experience in. And I was like, I want that. And I was able to learn something completely brand new. I was one of the first 5 people to learn this product in and out. And it was a very humbling and a growth inducing experience, because again, you are then going to become the person with the answers because you are one of the first ones. But this company has let me grow so much, both mentally and professionally, that I'll never, like, it always has a special place in my heart because of that.
Love it. Absolutely love to hear it. All right, we are at time, but I just want to say a big thank you. Lorena, thank you so much for spending your time with us today, sharing your expertise. It has been wonderful to get to know you and learn from you today. And just thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, y'all, to all of our attendees out there, I saved the chat, so you should be able to as well before we close out today's Zoom. If you want to know how to do that, go into the Zoom group chat. Down in the little box where you type your own responses and stuff, there should be a little ellipsis icon, so those 3 dots. Clicking on that should give you the option to save the chat, but you got to do it before we close out. So go and do that while I'm doing my exit spiel here. I dropped a ton of links in the chat at the very end, so apologies for the giant block. That is information on where you can check out the recordings on our YouTube channel, how you can join upcoming chats that we have scheduled up for the next couple days, weeks, months, all that good stuff. A link to our community space. This is another opportunity for networking, to get to know other people within the Power to Fly community, get more information, get closer, feedback from talent advocates within Power to Fly. HR people from our hiring companies go in there sometimes too. So it's a really good resource. And then last but not least, I shared the link to UKG's company page because they are hiring. So absolutely go and check out those links. If this was your first Power to Fly event, I hope it will not be your last. If you are one of our frequent flyers, it is always lovely to see new and familiar faces as well in the chat. So thank you all for joining. Today was really fun, not just because of the wild stuff happening in the chat, but because all of y'all participated. So thank you so much for that. We know that you have a ton of opportunities and options when it comes to joining events like this. So we are, as always, incredibly grateful that you chose to spend time with Power to Fly and UKG today. I hope y'all have a safe, happy, healthy rest of your weekend. Happy 420 if you celebrate. Just enjoy your day. And I hope that it will not be long before we see you back on another chat. Bye, y'all.
Bye.